Good morning. We are here on our next episode, and we're talking about the parent toolbox today. But before we get into that, we're on a journey to uncover the secrets of living with favor. Favor is an acronym that I came up with. It's the 5 areas of growth that were my focus over the last 40 years in business, and it stands for faith, abundance, vitality, overflow, and relationships. I started this show to honor those 40 years as an entrepreneur, and the promise is to introduce you to expert guests, to give you simple solutions for your struggles in life and in business. Sometimes I do a little training and offer a little advice, but welcome to Living with Favor. My name is Lisa Mosby, and I am the show host here, and I'm really here to fulfill my purpose to advise, train, and come alongside folks with those simple solutions for life and business. So Angie Weber is today's guest, and Angie created the Parent Toolbox, and I was on her show recently and got to pick her brain about this, and I just wanted to share her with my audience. I'm not a mom, and she has some amazing insight, being a twin mom, wife, mother, coffee addict like I am. She runs her own podcast. We both have a love for essential oils, and she does parent coaching, and I get so many questions about that. And it's just not an area of expertise for me, being an auntie, not a mom. So I want to jump in and talk to you, my dear. Welcome to my show, and thanks for being with me today. Did I miss anything on your extraordinary life? No? Oh, how in the heck did we get unmute? There we go. How do I mute you?
I accidentally muted myself because I had to cough and I didn't want to interrupt you. So I apologize. No, thank you so much for having me on. I look forward to this conversation. I hope I can live up to the hype of giving a lot of good advice to your listeners, for those that are parents, but also grandparents, aunts, uncles, pretty much anyone who has a relationship with a child in their life. I feel like this information can hopefully help them.
Yeah. And your mission, I talk about my mission, like to come alongside people and help them, but your mission, to help break generational parenting cycles so we can raise some really amazing humans. I took that right off of your website. The last few weeks I've been talking about connecting to something greater and impact. Like, how do we impact the world in a way? When I read that, like, that's global impact. You have no idea the trickle down. You may be working with a parent today whose child starts to work somewhere around the world or in international politics and, raising amazing humans. How did you get started with this? Like, where did this need come from for you to spread this message?
Yeah, it was kind of a crazy story. So, never intended to do this type of thing. I have been working from home since 2018, educating people on just more holistic options for their home, because I really feel like a lot of the things that we bring into our households are damaging to our health, mostly on the physical level I was looking at. But then 2020 came around, and that was a memorable year for all of us, wasn't it? And I actually had gone through some personal trauma before the pandemic started. And I started on this big healing journey of how do I better control my mental health, my emotions. Like, I just felt like I had lost myself throughout this process. And I remember in the summer of 21, I had been, doing the traditional things, trying all the things, but my anxiety and depression were getting really bad. And I wanted to try avoid medication if possible. And so I went to my doctor, we kind of talked about it, and he said, yeah, I'll give you a little bit more time to try find some other solutions. And so one of my girlfriends, long story short, actually recommended that I look into an outpatient intensive program to go through. And I found one locally here in our area, and it was Christian based, which was something that was important to me as well. And so I was in the program, and I was in there for anxiety, depression, and PTSD. And when they say it was intense, it was intense. I mean, I was doing up to like 15 hours of therapy a week at some points during the program. So I used to like go into the group and be like, you guys, I have a therapy hangover. I don't want to talk about my feelings anymore. Like, I'm done. I'm over it. But what the program really gave me is these foundational pieces that really help me better understand how we do process emotions, how our brain kind of plays tricks on us and tells us these different things of cognitive distortions and how we can start using safe and healthy coping skills to express our emotions. And it was just like that light bulb moment of like, oh my gosh, why do not more people know about this? Like, this should be common knowledge. Like, we don't need to focus on some of the stuff we do in school, like, because we're never going to use it. But this we should definitely be focusing on.
Life.
Exactly, life. And so I took these tools, I started using them for myself, saw huge changes in myself, felt so much more confident and finally like myself again, which for those moms out there can probably relate. Like, you feel like you completely lose yourself during parenthood. And then if you go through some kind of trauma, you don't get a day off. You don't get to lay around in bed for a week and just try to recoup. Like, you have tiny humans who are looking after you because you're their person. And so I started using a lot of the tools with my children as well. And again, saw huge results because at that time they were in kindergarten. And this was the first full year, like a first full school year of the pandemic. So their emotions, of course, were kind of high because we were going from in-person to hybrid to distance to hybrid to distance to in-person. And, that was really messing with them as
Confusing.
well. Yeah. And so I saw these great results. Long story short, I ended up doing a class based on these holistic options, but I also wanted to tie in some of these therapeutic techniques and concepts. And so I did a class called the Parent Toolbox. And some of the things that I heard afterwards were, why aren't we taught this? Why didn't I know about this sooner? Gosh, I really wish I would have had these tools when my kids were younger, because they probably think all I did was yell when they were younger. And so from there, it just kind of spun my passion into, oh my gosh, this stuff needs to be out there. We need to break these generational cycles that keep being handed down, because there's so much going on with our kids that we could hopefully kind of reverse, like mental health, the suicide rate, all these different things. And so that's why I started the Parent Toolbox. And then a little bit later, I started my podcast, Mom Essentials, where we talk about the best and messiest parts of motherhood, because I think we all need to kind of just have that grace of like, nothing is perfect and we're all a little messy. I've just been on a mission since then to work with parents and help them understand their emotions and their health and be more proactive with health on a physical, mental, and emotional level.
That's a lot. I mean, that is so much impact around the globe. And you're right, we don't have those tools. Like, what are we teaching our kids in school, and how do we step into those places of emotions and feelings? Because it's just, it occurs every day, all day. I always ask, with F.A.V.O.R, those 5 principles, is there one that's more present in your relationship, or in your, I think I already steer the direction. I know it. I think I know what you're going to pick because of what you do, but pick one of those, faith, abundance, vitality, overflow, or relationships. And
Yeah.
why is that? Why is that important, or how is that showing up in your business, I guess is what I want to know.
Yeah, well, I'm gonna go with relationships. Yes, that would be the one. But I'm just so passionate. One of the things with my podcast that I didn't expect, because I've done podcasts before. I know that they're a lot of hard work. They're a commitment. You need to stay consistent with it. But the amount of amazing people that I've met and the relationships that I have grown through this podcasting journey has honestly been one of the most fulfilling things that I've done. And so that relationship not only revolves around my business as far as finding these people who are also on the mission to break these generational cycles, help our kids be more emotionally intelligent and well-rounded and capable and resilient and all these other things, but also building those relationships with parents, because it can be really challenging. I mean, I know that there's a lot of moms that use, let's say, Facebook, for example, for an online resource. And there's lots of mom groups out there. I love them. I'm a part of a few of them. I think that they're great. And I think we also need to kind of see the good and bad in them, because it can get into a venting session. So you either say a problem and maybe you're going to get people's quote unquote advice. That's really their opinion. That's masked as advice. And then you feel even worse about yourself because you're like, oh my gosh, I asked this question and they're all telling me that I'm wrong. And so just really really creating that safe space for parents, and mostly moms, because I love to work with moms, and building those relationships to let them know, like, you're not alone, you're doing a great job. Like, if you ever worry if you're a good parent, that means you're a good parent. And just really building those strong relationships so they feel like they have some place to come to where they can vent if needed, but they're actually getting real life advice that they can start implementing. So it's not that complaining cycle all the time that so many of those groups get into.
It's the science, the fact that you went through this training and took that experience and converted it to a methodology that other folks can step into and use. So I want to share kind of more of that with folks, give them some tools. Like, is there a specific tool that you can share with folks today for how they implement that calmness? Like, how do we get over that initial anxiety and panic? And what's one of the tools that you might use, or if you have a couple that you can share that might be people could actually take away from this conversation today?
Yeah. So one of the biggest things is that I think that there's misconceptions about these different parenting approaches where gentle parenting, for example, some people think, oh no, kids really need discipline and you're just creating snowflakes and things like that. So the first thing that I want to say is proactive parenting, conscious parenting, gentle parenting, whatever kind of thing. Like, it's not that a one size fits all. You're going to take different things from different parenting approaches and kind of create your own, because that's what you really need to do. You need to decide as a family whether or not you have a partner that you're doing this with, of like, how do we want our family to be, and really get everyone on the same page about it. The other thing is that a lot of this parenting approach actually have to do more with us than it does with our kids. Because as you said, like, we get taught these different things in school, but we are not handed a manual when we're born. It's not like go to chapter 5 and see how to deal with your anger in the right, correct way. Like, we look to our parents because we're sponges when we're kids, and so are our kids. And so we look to them of like, well, what do they do when they get angry? Well, what does mom and dad do most of the time? They yell. So then the kid yells, but then the kid gets in trouble because he yelled because the mom yelled, so it's like this big cycle that happens. And so what we really need to do is start paying attention to ourselves as parents and really figuring out how can we regulate ourselves is the first step. And so what I really like to work with clients on and share a lot about is called the window of tolerance. And this was one of those like mind-blowing moments for myself, because again, what happens when a lot of us grew up is that we were taught to suppress our emotions. Don't be angry. Don't cry about that. Why are you so upset? It's not a big deal. What that did is make us shove down those emotions because they were uncomfortable. And so then as we grew up and those emotions started coming up, we're like, ooh, I don't like this feeling. I'm going to shove it down again because that's what I did before and it worked okay then. Well, now that we're older, we have to do a lot more work to rewire ourselves. So it's so much easier to start with us and then start working with our kids because they have less of that hardwiring happening. Like, we still have a chance to kind of redirect them in this, way of processing emotions so that they, again, can be healthier and we can be more proactive. And so the window of tolerance, just really quick, it was created by Dan Siegel. He's a clinical professor. He has some great videos out there. I highly recommend that you go watch them. My kind of version of it is I want you to pretend that you're standing in front of a window. When you're standing confident and upright, you can see everything that's happening outside that window. You can hear the birds. You can see the colors of the trees. You can maybe smell the dew on the grass. Like, this is where we're in our sweet spot, excuse me, of emotion. Now, what we want to be careful or mindful of is that we want to kind of start observing and becoming aware when we're getting outside of that sweet spot of emotion. So I like to call it high activation. This is our fight or flight, which could be, similar to if you're bouncing off the ceiling. When you're bouncing off the ceiling, you're going too fast. You're not going to be able to take everything in happening outside that window. And then we can also go into low activation, which is our freeze mode. And that's like if we were laying on the floor and maybe we can lift our head up a little bit, but we're not really going to be able to see anything that's happening out that window either because it's too high up. And so we want to be cautious and, again, aware, because that's a huge thing too, of when we're going into these other extremes so that we can start identifying those triggers and situations that are putting us there. And we can also start developing healthy and safe coping skills to get us back to that sweet spot. Because again, when we suppress our emotions and we don't want to deal with them, what we do is create these survival coping skills. So there, of course, are extreme ones like drinking, smoking, gambling, bad relationships with food, maybe a shopping addiction, like anything to numb it out so we don't actually have to deal with it. When in return, we can come up with a lot of great healthy ways to still express our emotions, because no emotions are bad. They just are emotions. We just need to figure out how to handle them in the best way for us. So we can start doing things like, if you're angry, we can push against a wall, we can scream into a pillow, we can play drums on the couch, we can go for a run. Like, there are so many other things that we can do to still process them. But again, we're not taught a lot of those. We're taught to suppress it. And so that's one of my biggest things, is just really start becoming aware of listening to your body and figuring out when you're going into those other extremes, so that you can start kind of regulating yourself. Because again, your kids are watching you. They're
Yeah.
sponges. They're going to pick it up. And so we need to start modeling it for them first.
Yeah, it makes me think of, it's kind of conscious behavior. Like, when we observe something, how do we react to it? Or do we react, or can we pause for a second and observe, rather than, that knee-jerk reaction, which we so often have, like listening to our emotions, listening to our bodies and how we're feeling, and then giving folks those tools to be able to express themselves. Another one for me, I talk more in that conscious language world, where the words that we use, what are we saying to our kids? What are we saying to ourselves? What's that self-talk that's going on? Have we dug a hole through our thoughts and through our vocabulary? And what I'm hearing from you is we also do that with our emotions. We kind of get stuck in that place, and we make feelings bad, or not okay. Maybe it's not bad, but we make it so it's not okay. And what you do is try to help people walk through that. We both have that essential oil background, and I know for me, I work with a lot of folks who've experienced trauma, using essential oils, because we can apply them to the body. We can cause emotions to be released by using certain scents, even smells and hearing. Our other senses become stronger and can help us to release some of those emotions. How do you pair that? Because I know that you work in that world with essential oils, tying that into some of these techniques and things that you're using. Can you speak a little bit to how that all complements each other?
Yeah, absolutely. So essential oils, I'm a huge oil geek. I have been using them. I actually used them when I was in labor with my twins, and they worked really, really well. I just didn't have the support or education to continue using them after, until they were about a year or so old. But I always started using them for the physical attributes, because again, I was like, oh my gosh, we're bringing in all these toxins. I was becoming more aware of that. And I wanted to bring in more natural options. And then I started learning more about the emotional benefits of it as well. And so the reason why essential oils, for your listeners, work so well with our bodies when we're going and experiencing different emotions, is because when we smell a pure essential oil, it's actually working with the olfactory bulb in our nose, which is sending a signal to the part of our brain that deals with moods and emotions. And so that's why aromatherapy is so popular. That's why lavender, although the stuff in the store is not actual pure lavender, but that's why lavender is always used in like calming and bath stuff and personal care products and things like that, because it has a calming effect. Now, the really cool thing with essential oils that you can do is that our smell is actually one of our strongest scents, right? And so senses. And so what we can do is we can actually create these different aromatic anchors with essential oils and different smells. So for example, let's say that you're in a store and you walk past someone who has like a cologne, for example, or a perfume of someone that you used to date. Now that might invoke a really good experience or memory. It might not evoke a very good memory, but you instantly go back to that moment, right? Like you instantly go back, you can think about them, like it just happens in a split second. We can actually create those own anchors within ourselves by using essential oils. So one of my favorite oils is called Adaptive. It's the calming blend. It was actually created for stress, came out in 2019 in perfect timing of the pandemic. And so what it really does is it helps just kind of like calm our nerves and our mind. And so when we are in one of these states, let's say that we're in our fight or flight mode, something, really kind of got us towards the high activation level, we can smell it. And the more often that we do that, the quicker we're going to do by creating that aromatic anchor. So the next time we feel ourselves going into that high activation, we can actually smell that oil again to help bring us back down quicker. And so there's a lot of different attributes to essential oils just by smelling them with the emotional benefits. But then there's also oils like copaiba, for example, That's really great for our nervous system. That is what happens a lot when we are kind of in our flight or fight or a freeze mode, is that our nervous system is completely out of whack. And so copaiba, for example, a lot of people use that 2 times or right in the morning, 2 drops underneath their tongue to get it into their system, because it helps relax the nervous system. Because our body is really amazing, but it's all very much connected too. And when we go through traumas, when we have bad things happen to us, our body stores that. And we really need to figure out how to process it, because otherwise it's going to come out eventually in some way or another. And so we need to try to take care of our bodies and be proactive with them so that it doesn't, turn into something detrimental down the road.
Yeah. You mentioned a number of times toxic chemicals. I started with non-toxic things at a really young age because I was pretty young when I was diagnosed with skin cancer. And so when we're smelling that stuff that you smell when you walk down the grocery, the soap, the laundry soap aisle at the grocery store, like I just cringe, it's like, it just makes me itchy and scratchy. And, as we're bringing in these scents, like you said, they are tied to emotions. They can help, or they're tied to our senses, and they can help release emotions. They can cause emotions. They can stir emotions. When we're sleeping on sheets that smell like a chemical versus sheets that smell like lavender, we may have a restless night of sleep. So, we're kind of covering that emotional piece of it. Let's jump into or move into, like, within the home, like what kinds of things should parents be aware of, to eliminate toxicity, like some simple basic things that people can look for, maybe start to shift, ditch and switch some of those toxic things that would help kids sleep better, eat better, be more calm, because scents can actually aggravate and cause anxiety and disruption in our emotions. Thoughts on that?
Absolutely. Yeah, I was going to say, I'm glad that you said that. Two little caveats before kind of diving into this. One is, yes, it is a lot of like the toxins that we bring in, which we think are safe because we buy them from the store. And so we're like, why would they sell it to us if it wasn't safe? Marketing, that's why, and money. And so first of all, yes, we do want to look at the physical attributes, but also the emotional thing, because these toxins are not only like piling up in our body and could cause, different illnesses down the road, but it also creates brain fog it unfortunately unbalances our hormones, which can help attribute to weight gain, stress, different skin irritations, things like that. So there's a lot that goes into it. So I'm glad that you kind of mentioned that the toxins are also, possibly triggering some different emotional things for children as well. And then the second thing is I think it can be kind of overwhelming when moms are like, wait a minute, I already have so many things to do. Now I have to go through my whole house and I have to clean and I have to switch and ditch everything. So I loved for people to know that this is just one of the tools that I offer for people. And you get to decide your own pace. And so if you are looking for natural options, just know you don't have to do everything right away. You don't have to go underneath your sink right now and get rid of every single thing. You can do it at your own pace. Just one step forward is still getting you forward. So I just always love to say that, because I think it can be overwhelming to a lot of people. But you're probably going to want to switch everything, because like you said, when you walk down that aisle, I mean, it's like an instant headache for me. I can barely even walk by like the laundry detergent aisle in a store without it like irritating my head. So, okay. So some things to look out for in your home. Again, some of those very basic things that we've just been grabbing off the store shelves forever. Fabric softener, or I'm sorry, fabric laundry sheets. That's what I meant.
Yeah.
Those are actually one of the most toxic things that we can have in our home. And so when you think about laundry, for example, you are possibly using a very well-known brand that your parents used and their parents used and their parents used. So when you're asked, well, why do you use this? Well, I don't know. That's what my mom used. Unfortunately, if you do the research, you can tell that you can actually find out that this brand is actually toxic to you when you sweat, because when you wash your clothes in it, there's still some of the residue on there. And then when you throw it into the dryer and possibly have some of those sheets in there, which is also one of the leading causes of fires in homes, it's still on your clothes when you put them on. And our skin is our biggest organ. That is where we absorb a lot of our things. So we are still absorbing those things into our skin. Even if we think that it completely washed out, there's still going to be some of that residue. So definitely look at your laundry a little bit, especially if your kids do have some kind of skin irritation or something like that. There are great alternatives. Use a natural laundry detergent. Use dryer balls. They're wool balls. You can add your different scents to it. So I know some people who really like ginger on their stuff. Some people really like lavender. I mean, you have an array of things to do. The other thing is cleaning supplies. So that's another huge one. Again, we're touching our surfaces all the time and we're absorbing some of that into our skin if there's residue on there. So we want to be able to clean effectively, which lemon is a great cleaner. That's why there's lemon in so many household products like our floor cleaners and sprays and things like that. Because it's a natural disinfectant, but we can create our own, or you can get pre-made ones too. But that's another big thing to look out for is like, what are we cleaning? Because we cannot control everything that's happening in our environment, but we can control what's happening in our home as far as these types of things happen. And then my last one is air fresheners and candles. Air freshener sprays, that would definitely be one that I would say ditch right away in a very well-known, again, brand that is sold and eliminates odors, quote unquote. There's 83 chemicals in one of those bottles. So when people say like, I don't know why my child is having issues with breathing, again, becoming aware of what things we're using, because if we're spraying that, it's not just eliminating odors, it's getting inside because we're smelling it, it's getting inside of our system. So a great replacement for that is diffusers. Again, you can pick whatever scent you want. It's actually way more cost effective because when you use a pure essential oil, you only need about like 4 or 5 drops in there. I think we've all had that time where we've went and bought a candle at some point and we're like, this smells amazing. We get it home and we're like, oh, that smells horrible. And I just wasted $15 on a candle that I'm never going to burn. Besides having, the negative toxins that are being released from that candle, again, just getting diffusers in there. And I just love being able to educate our kids on these natural, safe options, because if you are paying attention to anything like in the news and the media, about these different products, like there's so many things that are being recalled because there's, cancerous things in there, or there's this effect. And, then they come back and they say, oh, we reformulated it. Well, guess what? US lets a lot of stuff slide. Other countries that they sell in don't. So they already had that formula, but they just didn't have to do it here. And so again, just as the consumer becoming aware, becoming up on the knowledge, like really looking at what is in here. If you see fragrance on a bottle, that is a huge red flag to ditch that, because they could have 15 different synthetic smells in it. They could have 1,000 different synthetic smells in it, but all they have to do is label it as fragrance. So sorry, I feel like I've really got on my soapbox there. I'll reel it back in, I promise.
Yeah, between the two of us, we could talk on this for a few hours if we wanted to keep going. But like the key takeaways there for me. What I heard, I'm going to wrap it up for everybody. Is what's the air look like that you're breathing? Are you dumping chemicals into the air that your children are breathing? Are they complaining about sniffles, stuffy nose? What kind of physical things are happening in their bodies? Those are signs and cues and warnings that, hey, something may not be right. Where do you lay your head at night? What's on those sheets? What are you breathing all night long? Because as Angie mentioned, there's a residue on your clothes, on your sheets, on your towels. You're clean and wiping yourself with a towel that may not be clean. And what's on your clothes? You said ginger and something else, and I said during this time of the year, spring, summer, I use citronella because it helps your clothes become your bug repellent, having some of those scents. So as you dive into and explore how to manage emotions and use natural products, there's so many different tools that are available to us. So if you want to check into the toolbox, the parent toolbox with Angie, find out more about how we can take better care of our kids, how we can take better care of our homes, and tune into her podcast, Mom's Essentials, right? That's what it's called, Mom's Essentials. They can find it
Mom
anywhere.
Essentials. Yep.
Mom Essentials. Thank you, Mom Essentials. We have a minute or two here left. Do you have a final thought for anybody on where they should start, where they should go next?
I think that awareness piece, actually someone just yesterday I was talking to, she's like, I just don't know what to do. My 4-year-old is having all these behaviors. And I said, or have you observed anything? Have you really sat and watched? Like, when are these behaviors happening? Is it in the morning because you guys are rushed? Like, just if you feel like you don't know what to do because your kids are having these, outside behaviors that you don't know how to handle, again, take that pause. Like you said, I love that. Like, take the pause and just observe and see what you kind of notice versus just trying to be very reactive to the situation, because unfortunately that's the type of world we live in, is reactive. We need to be more proactive, and a lot of that comes with just observing it. And the other thing is that parents, you are doing a great job. Give yourself a little grace. Stop with the comparison trap, because you're seeing the highlight reel out there on social media, and just know that you are doing an amazing job, even if you're taking one tiny step forward just to be more proactive with their health.
Excellent. Thank you so much for that. And thank you for being with me today. I hope our audience took away a few pieces of advice. I would say one piece, but I think we're way beyond that. You need to go back and re-listen to the audio on here, because there was so much good content. And you can, of course, connect with Angie or myself. That'll be in the show notes where you connect with us. I'm Lisa Mosby. I've been your host, and I just want to say thank you for letting us share a little bit of advice with you today. And I want you to experience joy and personal fulfillment running a successful business. So if you are not yet an entrepreneur and want to talk about that, that's my wheelhouse. I can help you start that online business, or actually up level any online business or home-based business that you're currently working on. I would love to talk to you and discuss where you're going with your business. You know, the best part of this show is always the conversation afterward. Our audience can ask questions and go deeper with our special guests. So if you ever want to join us on Tuesdays live to go deeper with any of our guests, you're welcome to do that. And you can always find my replays on our YouTube channel. Connect with me at lisamosby.com to book time and have that conversation about your business. Otherwise, we will see you next week. And again, thank you so much to Angie.
Thank you.
Uh-huh.